third, we have Dr. Skeete, who's a professor at Megaris College, who's also author and mentor. He's a speaker to many around the world. Last year, he released his first book called Breaking the Chain of Self-Doubt, which is available on Amazon right now for anybody who wants to purchase. And today we're going to discuss the importance of getting sound education. So thank you, Dr. Skeete, for being here.
You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. So to start off, how long have you been in education for?
Oh my goodness, I've been in education for literally a little less than half my life. I would say about 25 years.
Wow.
I've been involved in the education arena. And my first foray, I started working as a tutor, way back then. And then I went into, from a tutor, I started conducting workshops for students um, this summer. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I taught in a summer program. I taught some high school kids. I taught junior high school kids in a summer program. I even taught some college students in a summer program. And all of this was while I was pursuing my undergraduate degree. And I think one experience that really stood out to me as I'm speaking to you here is sort of reminded me is that I remember I had a group of junior high school students. I was teaching them math. So in teaching them math, now, the first day of the class, I asked them, I said, how many of you like math? Show me a raise of hands. And I mean, very few hands went up. I would say out of 25 students, less than 5 hands went up. So,
Wow.
which was kind of interesting to me. So, with that, I asked them, I said to them, take out a sheet of paper and write for me what you think about math. And I'm going to collect all those papers, and it's, don't put your name on it, it's all anonymous. And I'm going to share out what your responses were with the other classmates. So I collected the pieces, and the words that were written on those papers were so disheartening, I just couldn't help it. So they said, math is suck. I hate math. Why do we need math? They should never have math as a subject. And I mean, majority of the responses were negative about math. So here it is. Now I'm thinking to myself, what math have these students been exposed to? Why they have such disdain for the subject matter? Because I'm quite sure in junior high school, there isn't really much math. It's more arithmetic that you been
Yeah.
exposed to. But yet still, they were they hated it, maybe from the teachers, from the classroom, from the environment, but whatever it was, it triggered that emotion in them that the majority of them didn't like math. So now my intention of going into that summer program was to teach math. However, based on that first day experience, I had to then change my entire orientation to help them. So I said to them, I said, okay, let's play a game. Let's play a game of sign numbers. So I said, if you have a positive one and a negative one and you combine them, what are you going to get? So that's
Positive.
me,
Yeah.
me, me. Zero. Oh, great. Awesome. I said, let's look at the converse. If you have a positive one and a positive one and you combine them, what did they get? Two. They were
Yeah.
happy when it was two. So I then asked the question, which is greater between 0 and 2? Of course, they agree that 2 is greater. I said, but what you fail to recognize is you are starting at 0 because you being in the classroom with me at that point, that's a positive one. But you having a negative mindset towards learning information that essentially
Small.
negates your purpose of why you're there before you started. I said before this program, this term, which was a summer program, started, you have negated your purpose of being here just by your mindset. I said, however, if you being here as a positive one and you have a positive mindset towards what you're about to learn, you stand a much better chance of being successful as opposed to the former where you're physically being here but mentally not here. And I think that really sort of inspired me and triggered me to really become more engaged with teaching. And even though I didn't study nothing to do with teaching because my background is my bachelor's degree is in mathematical physics and I did engineering and then environmental science for my doctorate. But the bottom line was that I always remember it simply because it made me recognize not only for those students who were in that class in that summer program, but students in general. They negate their purpose even before they start without recognizing it.
Wow, that's very interesting way to explain that. So I guess my next question would be, how important is mindset? In terms of getting choosing education. A lot of people. I know in college, when I was in college, I remember this one professor was saying most people who has a degree never use that degree at all. And I always found that very interesting how no one ever used that degree or anything, do anything with it after they get it. So how important is mindset?
Well, okay, good. Now, some professions, some degrees that students pursue, they're going to use a lot of it and apply it in a real way. However, the degree that we most people study and obtain essentially is just to get you in a certain critical thinking mindset, to get you to think, to get you to look at the big picture and not just localize in terms of this degree. We're supposed to open up all doors and get you where you need to be. That simply isn't true. Now, in answering your question, mindset is everything because you can have the wrong mindset with the right intention, and of course, you're going to negate your purpose. Eckhart Tolle, in one of his pieces, speaks about being current because, or being in the moment. A lot of people tend to live in the past without recognizing they're living in the past. And sometimes things may happen. It may trigger an emotion and may allow them to fall back into something that had a negative impact on their lives. And they then hold that in and then connect the two without realizing that one may have nothing to do with the other. It's important for individuals to recognize that the way you think and your mind is important in terms of your outcome, the things that you do, the things that you say. So, for example, we could think that, okay, right now, today's Friday, and let's say, for example, you had classes, you went to class, you did everything the right way as, as it should be. However, the question you would ask yourself is, am I really optimizing on who I am based on the things that I'm doing? Right? So if you are not thinking about, your actions, thinking about your steps, thinking about what you do, right? Essentially, you'll just be going through the motion. It's almost like a robot. You're just going through the motion without recognizing that what you did was just robotic in nature. But what is really needed for you is to think about the process that's happening around you. Think about what is happening around you, and of course, you can then make your adjustment to what is happening in order for you to optimize on who you are at that moment, engaging in that activity. So, with all being said, you need to have full control of what you're thinking. Your environment can influence you, but at the same time, you want to be able to regain control so that when you make your decisions could have a positive impact on you and those around you as well.
So how would you suggest somebody to do that? To have that control.
Okay. First and foremost is one has to know themselves. And I think a lot of people walking around right now without even knowing who they are. So if you ask the average person, who are you? Most immediately give us a name and an address and a telephone number. But exactly what makes you tick? What makes you act the way in which you act? What makes you do the things that you do? Most people don't know that. So what it means that you got to step back and peel those layers back. Because keep in mind, as I said before, your environment shapes the character. So some of the experiences in your previous life or in your younger years would influence you currently. So it's important for you to just step back and just ask yourself, who am I? What am I about? How am I going to go about accomplishing what I set with myself? And asking those questions, you need to be real with yourself. You need to have honest conversation with yourself. Who am I? Am I just a name? Am I just someone who is working at point X or point Y? Or am I someone who is very thoughtful? Am I someone who is full of charisma? Am I someone who is a positive thinker? Am I someone who is easily influenced? So you have to be able to answer that question for yourself. And in answering that question, you again, as I said, you want to keep it real for you. So it takes time for you to figure that out. And for example, I remember myself as a student in pursuing my undergraduate degree. when I first asked myself that question, I asked myself, what type of student am I? What type of learner am I? And how can I optimize on who am I? Yeah. So to start with that process, I had to figure out, am I a morning person or a night person? Could I study at night or could I study in the morning? When is the best time for me to study in order for me to optimize on who am I? Right? And for me, it was early morning. I'm not a night person. So early morning was the best way for me to study. So once I recognized that as, as part of who am I was able now to become a better student because at night I cannot study, I'm going to fall asleep. So if I decide to study at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night and I fall asleep, I'm just going to waste time. So I can say I spent 2 hours studying, but I wasted my time. So in the morning, 4:30, I can get up, I can study, I can get solid 2.5 hours in prior to school starting because that's how my mind functions. So in terms of understanding self, and being able to recognize who you are. It's got to start with you having a conversation with yourself and looking at areas of your life that you think are worthy enough that impacts your decision making and the things that you do in your everyday environment.
Yeah, that's good. I definitely want to speak about something. I learned this in your class. You this quote that you say you have to in order to learn, you have to unlearn what you know.
Absolutely.
Uh, so I want you to like elaborate, like that. How did you come up with that whole idea, and how's that help you in your
Well, you
education so
see,
far?
essentially, learn to unlearn to learn is very important because what I've come to realize in my personal life is a lot of things that I've learned in my earlier life wasn't of any real merit. There were a lot of stuff that in some cases were just not true. And because it just wasn't true, I accepted it because of who was the messenger. And in this case, the messenger were those close around me. In some cases, my parents, my siblings, my friends who are close friends with me, they were the messenger. But that didn't necessarily mean to say that what they were saying was correct. And because what they were saying was not correct, I had to be honest with myself and question what was being said and put it in the true context. And once I found that out, I started applying it in other areas of my life. So simply, I wouldn't just take someone word for the Gnostic gospel. I then begin to question what they were saying. So in other words, now what I started doing is again peeling back the layers and unlearning some of what I was taught as a child and applying what is the reality as a young adult and as an adult in my later adult life. Because quite often, again, because of who the messenger was, we tend to believe the story. And many a times it may not be true. It may be just based on fiction. It may be just based on hand-me-down information, what was passed down from the grandparents or the parent to you, but it had no real merit. So as a result of that now, if you do not allow yourself to unlearn some of the things or detach yourself from some of what you've learned, you're going to continue to perpetuate in some cases a false narrative. Now, what is important in the entire process is for someone to not get emotionally attached. And not because, something your parents said that, you believe up to a certain point, but now you get older, you realize that wasn't quite true. And don't feel any disconnect from your parents because you are disagreeing with them. Don't feel any disconnect from your friends because you're disagreeing with them, because that's all part of the process of unlearning and relearning. So emotionally, you're like, hey, it's fine. I recognize what they said wasn't quite true. So therefore, I need to just not recognize that. And in some cases, if they open the conversation and have the conversation with them and say why what they said was not truly correct. And at the same time, as I said, they're open, they can recognize what I'm saying because it's not based on emotion, but really based on, the content and the context of what is being said. So unlearning simply means to start by unlearning, you're detaching yourself emotionally, right?
Mm,
And thinking then that unlearning means to say then that if I did not respond or take someone's word, it meant then that I'm disrespecting them. No, you're not. You're just recognizing that what was said wasn't true. I mean, you look at social media right now. There's a lot of stuff that people post on social media that's not true.
You're
But
right.
some just take it as is because it's on social media. But they haven't taken the time to fact check to see whether or not what was being said is really true. So it's important for us to even recognize that more so because of what the impact of it could be in our life. So unlearning to unlearn is a process. Unlearning to unlearn means that number one, you don't take it personal. Number two, you remove yourself emotionally. So that's how you unlearn. Once you remove the emotional barrier, then you can be in a position to relearn what can be a truer or more accurate representation of what it is that you're learning rather than what you were told before in your young age.
That's a very great point of explaining it. So, you as a professor now, you've been in the education environment for a long time. How do you continue to educate yourself? A lot of
That's
time with people,
important. That's important. I'm sorry for interjecting.
no problem.
That's important for me because I have to stay current. Stay current in what I do, and not just in my area of specialty, but I have to stay current in things of life. Because remember, I'm a learner. And as a learner, you have to stay current in what is happening around you and not allowing it to saturate your mind. So you have to disconnect at times, right? To stay in current with me, I'm reading, I look at podcasts, I look at different videos, listen to audiobooks. That's all me being staying current. Not just, again, as I said, in my area, but in many other areas. Because I don't see myself as just someone who is centered to what or bonded to what area that I studied as a student. But I see myself that in the real world, we have to be multidimensional, just like the human body, physically. All of the organs work in tandem with each other for the work for you as a person, your overall persona, your wellness, the way you think, etc. And that's the same way how I see life on the outside, in that we cannot allow ourselves to be one-dimensional and think then that only the area in which we focus and we study on is what matters. Because in general, we have to do recognize that what is happening around us matters, whether it's politically, environmentally, culturally, socially, economically, or otherwise. So we have to be able to take pieces and knit them together into becoming one in this tapestry of information that can help us to not only stay current but be relevant in the things that we do.
So I guess my next question is, how do you feel about online education? Like the whole transition, Corona happened, and then it seems like it's going to go more to everybody learning online. How do you feel as an educator about that?
I think online education is here to stay. Whether or not we recognize it, but what this current situation has showed us clearly is that there's definitely a need for us to have a shift from brick and mortar classrooms. Yeah. So now, because we function in a world, in a global village where everything is interconnected, um, online information on online education is going to be the future. Now, to some, from a professional standpoint or a teaching standpoint, some people may be challenged with technology. And for them, they really don't want to use technology. They didn't adjust quite readily. But for others, including myself, we were able to just adjust because we were like recognize that this was just part of the process. Simultaneously, for students, some of them prefer the in classroom. It's more personalized versus, online, which they think is impersonal. Some of them prefer synchronous versus asynchronous, learning because with asynchronous, there is no set or fixed time, and the professor just going to put stuff up and give assignments, and they have to respond based on the assignments. So I say that right now we are in the infantile stage of online learning. And of course, it's a challenge. And like anything new, anything revolutionary, you're gonna have the kinks to work out. And once you're able to work those kinks out, things are going to smooth out and normalize. So I would say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we will be having this conversation because for most institutions, they're going to say, hey, you know what, 50% of our classes or some of our degree programs are strictly online, while we still have others that's in person. Now, for institutions that are considered to be non-committal schools, they would still want to maintain that in person because that's their bread and butter. In some cases, the schools, the location of the schools in the community is embedded in the economic tapestry. So for them, that would make a lot of sense. If you go to a non-commuter school, right? So you live on campus, you have dorms, you have the town that rely on the students spending money to keep them afloat and things of that nature. So a lot of these, state colleges that maybe in college town, they definitely would continue to maintain. But for but for a school like Medieval's College, for example, we're a commuter school. So whether they live at home and they travel to school and they go to work. So it's having online classes is going to be a benefit for a lot of students, especially trying to juggle two and three different things all at the same time. But I would say overall, from my experience, it's been a wonderful experience. Initially, it was a bit challenging, but now into my third semester, I've adjusted and it has become a norm for me whereby I can teach all my classes online, no questions asked, because I've adjusted and I like the online platform, even though some still think it's impersonal. But I would use ways and means to get my students engaged to make them feel comfortable enough to begin to interact with me, interact with each other. And I think that's really what's important along the way, for us to not be so stiff, but for us to be a little malleable so then that we can connect with the students and meet them where they are.
That's great. That's definitely. I feel like engagement is very important. Like me working in school, I feel like there's I guess, a big distance. It can be a distance feeling when tutoring kids online. Compared to when you do it in person. So I'm glad that you spoke on the engagement part. That they're able to be flexible to try different things out. I want to ask, how important is mentorship in terms of trying to get the right education?
Mentorship is everything. In everything that you do. And I mean, I think if I may just feedback a bit, one can have several mentors. One can have a mentor for everything, literally, if that's what you want. You can have an academic mentor, you can have a social mentor, you can have a financial mentor, you can have a mentor for mental health. It all depends on, your state of existence. But most likely, when we think of mentoring, we think of academic mentoring. There's someone who's there, who's been there before you, who can guide you and help you to walk through the process. And I would say then that I was able to do the things that I did because I had some great mentors. I had great mentors who although they were different, but yet still the goal was the same. The goal was keeping me as a centerpiece and me being the best that I can be. And these were individuals who didn't know me from the beginning, but they believed they saw something in me that I didn't see myself. In particular, the names are Dr. Frank Ragland, God rest his soul, and Dr. John Gibbs, God rest his soul. Dr. Ragland was a mathematician, Dr. Gibbs was a chemist. So it's different. But yet still, they were able to reach me in ways that many others couldn't. Why? Because they took the time and invested in me, and not only in myself, but other students as well. And they invested because they believed in us as young men coming up, and they really wanted the best for us. So we literally sat at their feet, learned from them, learned some of the lessons that they taught us, help us to become better young men, help us to become better students in general, and to be able to use some of their stories and ideas of their life and share it with us so then that we were able to then become the best that we can be. And in fact, in my book, I speak a lot on, the role that Dr. Ragland and Dr. Gibbs played in my life as mentors and helping me to become who I am. So I say then that mentoring is everything. And for a lot of us, especially African American community, we we do not have mentors. We do not have mentors, or we don't think that we need a mentor. We think that if you need a mentor because you're in trouble. We think that if you have a mentor, it simply means to say then that somebody have to do something for you. But that's not true, because a mentor is just someone who is going to help to guide you. You can have questions for them. They can help to elucidate on those questions that you may have and to help you overall. So, for example, when we talk about as students, we would attend the NCBPS conference, National Conference of Black Physics Students. And through Dr. Ragland and Dr. Gibbs, they would help us sometimes in terms of fundraising to go to these conferences. They would help us. They would dip into their own pockets and help us because they believed in us and understood the value in what we would have gotten from attending those conferences. So overall, it really helped to shape the way we think. And now, as being in the position that they were in, is about paying it forward. And paying it forward to those coming behind me, because I was able to gain a lot from having great mentors. So then, hence the reason why I could position myself to become a great mentor so that I could be of value to those young people who I have conversations with and who I guide. Whether or not it's writing a letter of recommendation that they need, which is very important, whether it's having a conversation about some issue that they've been trying to grapple with and they just somehow just couldn't unravel it and they would ask, seek my advice, or whether or not they just simply wanted to just talk for a few. Because sometimes people want to talk, but they're just not comfortable talking with just every and anyone. So if they see you as a mentor, they feel more comfortable after having developed a relationship with you to share things with you that they may not have shared with anyone else. Yeah. So because of that trust issue. So it's very important for us to have mentors. And I think everyone should have a mentor, at least one mentor in their life, simply because the mentors, once you have the right person or persons around you, can serve as a stepping stone to help you as you begin to elevate and go into higher heights in your personal life.
That's good. I mean, one question I do have in terms of mentorship, a lot of times people feel like, finding the right mentor could be difficult because, there's a lot of people that say they want to mentor you, but the fit may not be right. So how would you suggest people to go about networking with mentors,
Well,
especially in education field?
the fit is definitely right. And sometimes, number one, the person needs to have time. So you can't say have a mentor and the person doesn't have time for you. They make the time for you, right? So that's very important. And them having time and them making the time for you also helps to add value to that opportunity. Number two, you have to sort of do your homework. And don't just rush to somebody to become a mentor just because, but do your homework and find out more about this person, not just from what you see on paper, but about them on a personal level. Find out something about them so that when you're going to have a conversation with them and ask them to become a mentor, at least there's something that you have in common that connects you. And in this way, you can then make your decisions thereafter. But don't just rush to somebody because um, they may be they may say, well, hey, I can be a mentor to you, but yet still they don't have time for you. Don't just rush to someone to become a mentor that someone that you're just not comfortable with or you don't trust. Because remember, this is someone who you're going to be sharing stuff with, and you expect it to stay within that frame, and they would guide you accordingly. So you want to ensure then that when you recognize someone, you choose someone to become a mentor, it's someone that you feel comfortable with, someone that you trust, and someone that you have done your homework and find out something about them that you can then you feel comfortable talking to.
Okay. One of my last few questions. What does it mean to be educated in this age and age? What does it mean? How would you define that for somebody to be an educated person?
Well,
Like,
educated to be educated goes beyond just book knowledge, right? And I think a lot of times when we think of us being educated, we just think in terms of having a degree, but that really doesn't mean much. It's about your personality. It's about your relatability. It's about your ability to continue learning. And I think that's where a lot of us sort of fall short. We fall short because we think that the degree is all that we need in order to be defined as somebody who's educated. And a degree just shows me then that you went through a certain level of training and you studied a certain area, and then that's it. That's all the degree tells me. But a person who's able to relate, a person who's able to listen, a person who's able to be a team player, a person who's able to share information. I would consider that person to be more educated, even though in some cases they may not be academically trained, but they're more educated, they're more learned, as opposed to that person who is just there with a degree, hiding behind a degree, and thinking that that suffices for education.
Did you read any books? Can you recommend any books that help you in terms of your education? Like, what some books have you read?
Well, I would say Eckhart Tolle, books, I read a couple of his books. I also, one book that really influenced me is Khalil Gibran, The Prophet. That book really influenced me a lot, and it helped me to put things into perspective in terms of life. Because in the story of the prophet, this prophet was, he was going away, so he had people just come and ask him questions, and he would just give them answers based on the questions that they were asking, simply because he that's who he was. And the answers he was giving was so profound. We were asking questions about anything. And of course, he would give these answers to everyone accordingly. So that book really did influence me a lot. Then there were a couple of books, historical. The Black Jacobins was a book that was quite influential too in terms of my learning, understanding of life lessons. And there are a couple others as well that I can call on that made a difference because of some of the lessons or some of what I learned from in those books, and some I continue to read. For example, I would say the Bible is a very interesting book that anyone can read and really look at the stories from yesteryear and put in the context of today's world. So it's important for us to be able to do that and understand that book in particular. But overall, reading is one thing, but being able to apply what you've read is really good. And I think that's where a lot of us fall short. So I wouldn't say then that I don't read as much as I used to do in the past,
Okay.
but I still do read. And at the same time, it's important for us to continue informing ourselves through whether it's reading a book, an article, a research paper, listening to a podcast. So there's a whole variation now that we have access to and available to us for us to be able to do so and become become a better person.
Okay. So since you're also author, like, should we expect more different books? You writing different books in the future?
But I do have another one here that's going to be coming out at the end of spring. I wrote
Okay.
a colleague of mine. It's called Social Media Pandemic. And it specifically speaks about social media, the impact. And the question I'm going to ask anyone is, are you being influenced or are you being an influencer? And of course, in part of what I wrote, what was written in that book, it speaks about what the big corporations are doing and how they're using social media to influence people without recognizing that they're being influenced.
That's dope. So thank you, Dr. Ski. Where can people find you to contact you?
Well, they can contact me. I'm on Instagram, my name, Dr.skeete. They can definitely find me. I'm on Facebook, same name. They can find me as well. Or my book that's on Amazon, the first one, Breaking the Chains of Self-Doubt, which they can also find me. Those are places. If they DM me, I'll be happy to have a conversation and, to continue the conversation if they have questions.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Ski, for your time. It was a pleasure having you talking about education and the future of education.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right.